Hey there, dreamers. Welcome back. The cozy corner where we drift through the wonders of our world, softly and curiously. I'm so happy you've decided to spend a quiet moment, whether it's night, morning, or that calm in between, unwinding here with me. Tonight, or whenever this gentle sound finds you, let's close our eyes for a moment, or simply soften our gaze, and allow our imaginations to stretch across immense gulfs of time. Let's travel not just days or years, but millions upon millions of years, back to an era when the currents of life flowed through vastly different landscapes. Picture, if you will, the world not quite as we know it, but bathed in an ancient warm light, its continents nudging one another into different arrangements, its atmosphere breathing slightly richer, slower, and most profoundly, imagine its oceans, not the restless, churning waters that lap against our modern shores, but immense, vast, sun-dappled stretches that pulsed with an energy both familiar and wonderfully alien. These ancient seas, deep and luminous, were home to creatures whose very names still evoke a hushed reverence. They were realms of a vibrant, often overwhelming, symphony of life. Fish swam in immense shoals, glittering like scattered jewels beneath the surface. Turtles, larger than any we know today, drifted with slow, deliberate strokes. And amongst this living tapestry, in the golden epochs of the Miocene and Pliocene, there swam an undisputed Titan, a ruler not just of a kingdom, but of an entire watery empire. This was a creature whose very scale defied easy comprehension, a living legend, etched into the geological record through scattered, majestic remnants. We find its legacy not in bones that articulate a full skeleton, but in something more fundamental, more terrifyingly iconic: teeth. Teeth so large, so perfectly designed, that each one tells a story of power, of precision, and of a breathtaking, almost incomprehensible dominance. Imagine then tracing the curve of such a tooth, feeling its finely serrated edge, recognizing its sheer, immutable strength. Each groove, each polished surface, speaks of a master craftsman honed by millions of years of evolution, a silent testimony to a perfectly adapted hunter. These are not merely instruments of predation, but marvels of biological engineering, capable of cleaving through the largest of ancient marine life with an ease that sends a shiver through the mind's eye. As we gently drift through the soft currents of geological time, considering this awe-inspiring evidence, we begin to form a picture not just of a very large shark, but of an entire oceanic epoch, dominated by its silent, immense presence. This was Odotus Megalodon, often simply known as the Megalodon, a name whispered through the corridors of paleontology, signifying a creature that, for an astounding 20-million-year reign, sat at the absolute, unchallenged apex of its watery world. It was a being whose ecological footprint was not just significant but monumental, a force of nature embodied in muscle and cartilage and teeth, swimming through the tropical and temperate seas with an undeniable, effortless supremacy. Its very existence was a kind of oceanic symphony, a deep hum beneath the waves that echoed the unyielding efficiency of a perfect predator. Think for a moment about what it means to be truly dominant, not just a successful species, but the species that shapes the very landscape of its environment. For Megalodon, its incredible size, estimated to reach lengths of well over 50 feet, a staggering number when you imagine it gliding through the open water, was paired with an immense hunting prowess. It didn't just compete for resources, it likely defined the limits of its prey populations. Young whales, vast shoals of large fish, sea cows, and even other sharks would have navigated their lives under the vast, unseen shadow of this majestic behemoth. Its shadow would have stretched far beyond its physical presence, influencing migration patterns, feeding grounds, and even the evolutionary trajectory of other species. To exist in its world was to exist in relationship to the Megalodon, and yet, within this story of unrivaled dominion, a peculiar question begins to emerge, gently stirring the surface of our contemplative journey. What happens when a creature becomes too perfectly adapted? Can there be a point where the very qualities that make something astonishingly successful eventually, subtly, become its greatest vulnerabilities? Is a question that whispers from the ancient depths, carrying with it the subtle understanding that even the mightiest rivers eventually carve new paths, that even the tallest mountains erode under the ceaseless touch of time. The story of Megalodon is not simply one of impressive survival, but rather a profoundly moving contemplation of the delicate dance between power and adaptability, between an incredible peak of perfection and the inevitable shifts of a living, breathing planet. So, let us prepare to settle in further, to softly unwind the threads of this ancient mystery. We are not seeking answers in a hurry, but rather allowing them to unfurl before us, like a calm tide reaching the shore. We will delve into the nuances of what made this Leviathan so successful, and in doing so, we'll slowly uncover the delicate environmental shifts, the intricate ecological interactions, and the subtle, unfolding drama of deep time that ultimately led this magnificent, undisputed ruler of the ancient oceans toward its slow, enigmatic fading from the world's stage. What were the hidden pressures, the quiet forces, that could bring an end to such a long and prosperous reign? The answers lie not in dramatic collisions or sudden cataclysms, but in the softer, more pervasive narrative of change, of an empire of muscle and teeth encountering an epoch that slowly, yet inevitably shifted around it, gently nudging it out of existence. Imagine for a moment an ocean utterly different from the one we know today. Cast your mind back through the vast stretches of time, past the ice ages that shaped our modern world, into epochs bathed in a profound, pervasive warmth. We are venturing back into an ancient time, largely spanning the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, when our planet was a different tapestry of blue and green, a world less etched by the cold breath of glacial epochs. Picture shallow, sprawling seas reaching further inland across continents, their sun-warmed currents caressing coastlines now high and dry. This was a realm where vast marine nurseries thrived in abundant tranquility, a sanctuary of life unfolding beneath the generous sun. The very atmosphere held a different quality then, thick with the moisture rising from warmer waters, painting skies perhaps a deeper, richer blue, or bruised with more frequent soft rain. The air itself might have hummed with the unseen energy of an ocean brimming with vitality. Land masses were subtly different too. Coastlines shifted. Great land bridges allowed creatures to wander where today only ocean separates continents. Yet, it was the oceans that truly held the stage for our story, colossal, fertile ecosystems patiently developing over millions of years into a breathtaking theatre for the largest predators to emerge. These ancient seas were cradles of biodiversity, teeming with an incredible array of marine life. Unlike the sharper thermal stratification of modern oceans, where cold, deep waters often create barriers to dispersal for warmth-loving species, these epochs saw broader swathes of relatively uniform, comfortable temperatures extending from the equator far towards the poles. This meant that the rich, fertile ecosystems often found in tropical and subtropical waters today then stretched across much wider bands, offering continuous habitats for flourishing populations of prey. Imagine endless meadows of kelp forests, swaying gently in the currents, providing shelter and sustenance for countless fish, creating a dense interconnected web of life from the microscopic plankton up through massive schools of pelagic creatures. It was into this opulent setting, this oceanic Eden, that one of history's most formidable hunters ascended to the very peak of the food web. For many millions of years, the name Megalodon, Otodus megalodon, to use its full stately designation, would be synonymous with unchallenged dominion over the world's temperate and subtropical waters. This wasn't a sudden, explosive arrival, but rather the gradual refinement of an ancient lineage. A lineage of enormous, broad-toothed sharks whose ancestors had already been patrolling the prehistoric seas for ages. Each generation, over deep eons, subtly perfecting the design of an apex predator. To understand Megalodon is to step away from modern scales of measurement, to let go of our present-day understanding of marine ecosystems, and to imagine a creature built on a wholly different order of magnitude. Picture, if you will, the largest white shark known today. A creature that rightly inspires awe and respect for its power and grace. Now, gently expand that image in your mind's eye, double its length, and then almost double it again, augment its mass many, many times over. The truly colossal nature of Otodus Megalodon becomes a challenge to grasp fully. A creature whose length could stretch as long as a modern blue whale is in its infancy, sometimes reaching estimations of up to around 60 or even 70 feet. Imagine standing next to a structure that tall. Now imagine it moving with intent through the water. This was not merely a large fish, it was a living geological force. Its very name, Megalodon, simply means big tooth, and indeed it is primarily through these astonishing teeth that we gain our clearest window into its existence. Found scattered across the ancient seabed, fossilized remnants of bone beds, or even nestled in the sandy soil of bygone coastlines now elevated to dry land. These teeth are breathtaking in their size and distinctive morphology. They are not merely enlarged versions of a great white shark's teeth. They possess a subtly different curvature, a finer, more precise serration, and a robust thickness that speaks to an immense biting power designed to shear through dense bone and thick blubber. Imagine a single tooth, broad at its base, rising to a razor-sharp point, large enough to fill the palm of a grown hand, its edges serrated with the precision of a master craftsman's saw. Now multiply that by hundreds, arranged in several rows within a jaw capable of opening to truly prodigious proportions. The force these teeth exerted was beyond anything seen in the modern ocean, capable of exerting bite forces that would crush a car. But let us not dwell on the raw clinical numbers. Rather, consider the implication of such a structure, a testament to its singular purpose, its unique and formidable approach to survival in a world of giants. Megalodon's massive frame was undoubtedly an adaptation to its chosen lifestyle, requiring not just ample physical strength, but also an internal furnace of metabolism to keep such an immense body warm and active. As a large, active, warm-blooded, or rather warm-bodied, as many large sharks are endothermic to some degree, predator, it would have required vast amounts of energy to sustain itself. This energy, of course, came from the most substantial and available prey in its environment, which brings us, quite naturally, to the creatures that filled this gargantuan hunter's diet. The ancient oceans, remember, were brimming with large marine mammals, the very creatures that Megalodon was exquisitely adapted to hunt. The stage for this drama was often set in the same fertile coastal waters that served as nurseries for so many species. Imagine pods of ancient whales, perhaps less agile and speedy than some of their modern relatives, but no less massive. These early baleen whales, ancestors of today's majestic giants, or sperm whales with their formidable heads, would have migrated through these warm, nutrient-rich corridors, their immense bodies providing a rich and highly sought-after source of energy. Along the same coastlines, ponderous sea cows, relatives of today's gentle manatees, grazed on submerged grasses, while ancient seals and sea lions congregated in rookeries. These were not merely prey, they were entire ecosystems of calorie-rich targets, perfectly scaled to the needs of the immense shark. Megalodon's predatory strategy likely revolved around its immense size and power. This wasn't the frantic, acrobatic chase of smaller, faster hunters. This was the methodical, relentless pursuit of a true behemoth. Imagine the slow, almost imperceptible approach, a colossal shadow detaching itself from the depths. Its hunting technique likely relied on ambush and incapacitation, perhaps utilizing its speed, remarkable for its size, in short, powerful bursts. Fossil evidence suggests attacks often targeted the flukes or fins of large whales, effectively disabling their ability to escape. Once immobilized, the sheer size of Megalodon's maw and the formidable crushing and shearing power of its jaws would allow it to take devastating, incapacitating bites, quickly overpowering its prey. This would have been less of a hunt and more of a decisive, unavoidable assertion of ultimate predatory might, a deep-sea, silent ballet of immense power and overwhelming force. Its incredible sensory capabilities would have further enhanced its hunting prowess. Like modern sharks, Megalodon undoubtedly possessed an incredibly sensitive lateral line system, capable of detecting the faintest vibrations and movements in the water, even those caused by distant struggling prey. Add to this its well-developed electroceptors, the ampullae of Lorenzini, which could pick up the subtle electrical fields generated by the muscle movements of its potential meals. Even when hidden from view or lurking in murky depths, these combined senses would have painted a rich, detailed picture of its underwater world, turning the seemingly boundless ocean into a finely tuned landscape of opportunity for this apex hunter. It was a predator whose presence permeated the very fabric of the ocean, a being whose influence would have been felt across its entire ecosystem, silently guiding the movements and habits of every creature sharing its watery domain. For millions of years, Odidus Megalodon reigned as the unchallenged sovereign of the ancient seas. No other predator could rival its sheer size, its jaw strength, or its profound specialization for hunting the largest marine mammals. In this sense, it truly was dangerous, a threat beyond comparison to anything that swam with it. Its dominance was absolute, allowing it to dictate the terms of engagement within its vast territories. It consumed its prey with devastating efficiency, ensuring that its immense metabolic demands were met, thriving in a world that, for eons, remained largely stable and abundant. It was perfectly tuned, an unparalleled marvel of evolution for the specific conditions of its time. This era of dominance stretched over such a profound length of geological time that it's almost incomprehensible to us. Imagine humans existing, largely unchanged, for 20 million years. This provides a rough analogy for Megalodon's enduring success. For creature after creature that rose and fell in the evolutionary dance, Megalodon continued its stately patrol. This long reign cemented its status not just as a king, but as an integral, fundamental component of the ancient marine ecosystem. It wasn't an anomaly, it was the norm for millions upon millions of years. Its presence helped shape the evolution of other marine animals, perhaps encouraging swifter movement in whales or deeper dives as defensive strategies. Its hunting patterns maintained balance, ensuring no single prey population grew unchecked, thus safeguarding the health and vitality of the ecosystem it presided over. And so we arrive at the cusp of a crucial understanding. The very attributes that made Megalodon such an awe-inspiring, dominant and dangerous predator during its long reign, its immense size, its massive dietary needs, its specialization on large, relatively slow-moving prey, and its preference for warm, nutrient-rich coastal waters, these characteristics, while forming the bedrock of its spectacular success, also contained, within their very strength, the seeds of a profound vulnerability. In a world of stability and boundless plenty, they were ultimate advantages. But what happens when the very foundations of that world begin to tremble? What becomes of the most specialized predator when the conditions it has so exquisitely adapted to begin to subtly, then inexorably shift? Imagine for a moment the sun-drenched surface of an ancient sea, perhaps 20 million years ago. a vast sapphire expanse shimmering under a sky we would recognize, yet utterly foreign in its depth. We know already of the shadow that moved beneath this surface, a titan unlike any creature that has truly called the open ocean its domain since. The foundation has been laid for its existence. The quiet whispers of its awe-inspiring power have reached us. Now, let us embark on a journey, a long and unhurried drift through the very currents of its existence, to truly understand the magnificent Leviathan, Odotus Megalodon, and to gently consider the intricate tapestry of its world, and how that world ultimately shifted, leaving no suitable thread for its survival. Let your mind drift to the warmth of those primordial waters, cradling vast continents still finding their shape. Close your eyes and listen. Perhaps you can hear the distant, resonant calls of early baleen whales, their immense forms navigating the boundless blue. You might perceive the rhythmic shush of waves upon ancient shores, where mangrove forests stretched for miles, creating a verdant, labyrinthine nursery. It is into this vibrant, sunlit stage that the Megalodon made its grand entrance, not as a sudden spectacle, but as an emergent perfection, a being honed over millennia to its specific, magnificent purpose. The very name, Megalodon, great tooth, serves as a prelude to its immense scale. Picture a hand, gently closed around a stone found upon a beach. Now imagine that stone growing, slowly, steadily, until it could comfortably encompass that entire hand, then your entire arm, then, perhaps, even a small loaf of bread. Such was the average size of its cutting tools, each a formidable testament to its lineage and its lifestyle. But these teeth, remarkable as they are when held in our hand, tell only a fragment of the story. They hint at a mouth of colossal proportions, capable of opening wide enough to envelop the chest of a diving human with room to spare. And behind that mouth, a body designed for immense, silent power. Consider the sensation of mass, the sheer, unimaginable weight. A mature megalodon, by our current estimations, likely approached lengths of 60 feet, some perhaps even 70 or 80, its entire form streamlined and resolute. To visualize this, let us think not of its modern leaner relatives, but rather of a living submarine, vast and utterly potent. Imagine, if you will, gently displacing a column of water equivalent to 2 full-sized city buses, end to end, all in the deliberate movement of a single creature. The mere effort required to shift such an enormous bulk through water is astounding, requiring a colossal engine of muscle, bone, and intricate biology. Its skin, likely a mosaic of finely textured dermal denticles, would have felt like sandblasted steel beneath the gentle caress of the currents, each tiny scale reducing drag, allowing its massive frame to glide with deceptive grace. Its sheer bulk was not merely for show, it was an integral component of its predatory strategy. Such a behemoth required immense energy, and therefore immense prey. Its world was abundant, overflowing with marine mammals, particularly a stunning diversity of whales, dugongs and seals, all providing rich, fatty nourishment. The ocean, then, was a banquet, and the Megalodon, an undisputed guest of honour, possessed the ideal cutlery for the feast. Let us then consider the intricate design of its primary weapons, those awe-inspiring teeth. Unlike the dagger-like points of some other marine predators, each megalodon tooth was a marvel of biological engineering, a triangular blade, often serrated along its edges like the finest of steak knives. The serrations were not accidental, they were microscopic razor edges, perfectly crafted to slice through blubber, sinew, and even bone with horrifying efficiency. Think of them not as mere pointy things, but as finely ground shears designed to part dense tissues rather than merely puncture. A living megalodon would possess multiple rows of these teeth, hundreds of them, lining its massive jaws. They weren't static fixtures, but part of a dynamic, self-renewing armament. As a tooth aged, or was damaged during a struggle, it would loosen and eventually fall out, to be replaced by a new pristine blade waiting in a conveyor belt system behind it. Picture, if you will, the serene and relentless tide. Just as one wave recedes, another is already building behind it, moving forward to take its place. This continuous cycle of replacement meant that a Megalodon's formidable arsenal was always at peak performance, a subtle, underlying mechanism of its unparalleled success. Each time you stumble upon one of these fossilized teeth, preserved in the ancient sediments, you are not merely holding a relic of the past, but a tiny, perfect snapshot of this magnificent biological efficiency, a gentle testament to its unending cycle of renewal. The discovery of a Megalodon tooth is often accompanied by a sense of quiet wonder. Imagine a stroll along a quiet stretch of beach, or the methodical sweep of a dive team across a murky ocean floor. Suddenly, a glint, a dark, smooth, heavy object, unlike the other shells and pebbles. To brush away the sand, to rinse off the ancient silt, and to find in your palm this perfectly formed relic, is to feel a direct connection to that vast, ancient past. Its polished surfaces whisper of the ceaseless currents that shaped its journey through time, and its sharp edges speak, albeit silently, of the life it once carved out in the ocean depths. There is no thrill in such a find, only a deep sense of reverence for the powerful forces of nature and time, which brings us to its formidable bite force. When we speak of bite force, we often resort to numbers, but those numbers fail to convey the true visceral impact. Instead, let us imagine a force so immense that it could, if directed, crush the hood of a large truck into a compact ball. Consider the pressure, not on a single point, but across the vast, curved expanse of its jaws. This was not merely a grab and tear. It was a devastating engagement. Studies attempting to model this power have suggested forces capable of generating up to 24,000 to 40,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. To feel this, even in your mind's eye, would be to understand true, crushing inevitability. This immense pressure was precisely calibrated for its chosen prey, the large, often swift marine mammals, whose thick hides and powerful bone structures might deflect a lesser predator. The Megalodon's bite was a guarantee, a definitive conclusion to any pursuit. Yet, this power was delivered not with frantic, jerky movements, but with the measured might of a patient hunter. A creature of such profound mass would not lunge with sudden bursts of energy often. Its momentum, once generated, would be tremendous, its turns deliberate, its overall movement, while swift when necessary, inherently grand and expansive. We might imagine its presence as less like a lightning strike and more like a gathering storm. Slowly, inexorably it approaches, its purpose unwavering. How did such a massive animal stay warm enough to operate efficiently in the vast, sometimes cooler, stretches of the ancient ocean? Unlike true warm-blooded mammals that maintain a constant core temperature, the Megalodon, a cartilaginous fish, likely employed a clever physiological trick known as regional endothermy. Imagine the very core of its most powerful muscles, the ones propelling its tail, or those governing its jaws, generating and retaining their own metabolic heat. It was like a focused internal hearth, allowing these crucial areas to operate at optimal temperatures, granting it speed and endurance that many purely cold-blooded sharks might not possess. This localized warmth wasn't a universal body heating system, but rather a strategic advantage. It meant quicker muscle contractions, faster nervous system responses, and the ability to digest its colossal meals more efficiently. Even when ambient water temperatures dipped slightly below comfortable levels, it allowed this formidable hunter to push into subtly cooler hunting grounds than some of its relatives, expanding its predatory reach and reinforcing its position at the apex. This ability to regulate crucial body parts was not an indulgence, but a fundamental requirement for such a large, active predator. a quiet testament to the intricate balance of its form and function. It was, in essence, a living, subtly warmed hunting machine. With a picture of the Megalodon itself slowly forming in our minds, let us turn our gaze now to the stage upon which it performed its epic existence, the Miocene and Pliocene oceans. This era, stretching roughly from 23 to 2.6 million years ago, represented a golden age for marine life, an era of burgeoning diversity and remarkable abundance. The Earth's climate was, on average, considerably warmer than today. Polar ice caps, while perhaps present, were much less extensive, meaning global sea levels were higher, and vast swathes of coastline formed shallow, nutrient-rich seas. Picture, if you will, the serene and vibrant coastal nurseries, teeming with life. Broad, verdant expanses of mangrove swamps would have hugged many tropical shorelines, their tangled root systems providing intricate shelters for countless juvenile fish, crustaceans, and the young of many larger marine species. These would have extended for miles, an incredibly rich ecosystem fostering growth and diversity. Beyond these havens, immense seagrass meadows would have rippled gently under the currents, vibrant green pastures providing sustenance for dugongs and sea cows, whose lumbering forms were a common sight. And out in the deeper, more open waters, the giants moved with slow purpose. This was a time when baleen whales were beginning their magnificent radiation, evolving into an astonishing array of shapes and sizes. Think of them: sleek, dolphin-like ancestral sperm whales, massive filter-feeding cetaceans whose distant descendants still grace our seas, and entirely extinct lineages, all thriving in an environment overflowing with plankton and small fish, the very building blocks of the oceanic food chain. The water, bathed in sunlight for greater stretches, was biologically rich, driving spectacular blooms of phytoplankton that in turn supported an immense zooplankton population. This abundance trickled up, fueling the existence of truly prodigious numbers of fish, sharks, and, crucially, marine mammals. Imagine the sheer plenitude, the overflowing cornucopia of calories. For a predator the size of a megalodon, such an environment was not merely a comfort, but a necessity. It was a time of dynamic balance, where immense energy flowed freely from the sun through the intricate web of life to finally be captured by the ultimate apex predator. This was a world that could sustain a megalodon, where its immense size was not a burden but an optimized expression of its ecological niche. Its domain stretched across almost all temperate and tropical waters of the globe. A truly cosmopolitan king of the seas, its territory limited only by the dictates of temperature and depth. Fossil finds of its teeth have been recovered from nearly every continent, testament to its global reach during this era of warmth and plenty. It was a period where the vastness of the ocean perfectly matched the vastness of the beast. Within this realm of abundance, the megalodon crafted its unique predatory dance. One might picture it as less a frenzied sprint, and more a calculated ambush, given its massive proportions. We can only piece together its strategies from the silent, ancient wounds found on the bones of its prey, from the careful arrangement of its formidable teeth, and from what we observe in other large, extant apex predators. But what we reconstruct is a picture of incredible power, applied with strategic deliberation. Imagine, then, the rhythmic, undulating sweep of its mighty tail fin, propelling its immense body through the deep blue, often near the fertile edges of continental shelves, where whales and other marine mammals would gather to feed or breed. Its keen senses, far beyond our human comprehension, would have been constantly alert. Perhaps the distant thrum of a swimming whale, a low-frequency vibration carrying far through the water, or the faintest electrical field generated by a hidden school of fish would draw its attention. We tend to think of sight as primary, but in the often murky depths, other senses, sound, vibration, perhaps even a sense akin to a living magnetic field detector would be paramount. When a large whale presented itself as a potential meal, the attack would have been orchestrated for maximum impact and minimum risk to the colossal shark. Fossil evidence offers tantalizing clues to its approach. Some whale ribs and vertebrae bear unmistakable scrape marks, suggesting that the Megalodon often initially aimed not for a killing bite, but for a disabling one. Picture, if you will, the swift upward rush from the murky depths below, aiming for the powerful flukes or the sturdy ribcage. The first strategy appears to have been a stunning blow to the propulsive force of the whale, the tail. Imagine the colossal jaws clamping down on the whale's flukes, or lower vertebral column. A bite aimed here would not be immediately fatal, but would render the whale immobile, unable to swim effectively, turning its immense bulk into a vulnerable target, slowly bleeding, slowly sinking. This kind of disabling attack demonstrates a profound understanding of mechanics and anatomy, a predatory sophistication. The sheer momentum and power of a 60-foot predator launching upwards combined with its crushing bite would sever muscle, snap bone, and shatter hope. Once the whale was disabled, a slower, more deliberate phase of the hunt would ensue. There might be no urgent thrashing melee. Instead, the Megalodon might patiently wait for the immense prey to weaken, or perhaps circle, taking strategic, precise bites from areas of high caloric value, the blubber, the organs. One common injury pattern observed on fossil whale bones are repeated: serrated bite marks around the pectoral fins and the ribcage. These were regions rich in fat and organs, and perhaps the massive bulk of the Megalodon would utilize its formidable leverage to rip away substantial chunks, its unique serrated teeth perfectly suited for such a task. It's important to acknowledge that this was not a desperate, frantic scramble for food, but often likely a controlled dismantling. The Megalodon didn't merely kill, it harvested. Its existence dictated that it needed prodigious quantities of high-calorie, fatty blubber to sustain its own immense body and its regionally warmed muscles. Whales, rich in just these things, were perfectly suited prey. Even if a smaller whale was successfully captured, its energy would quickly wane against the unrelenting pressure of those jaws. The scenario then might become one of profound, slow finality, the predator methodically consuming, taking its time. Consider the energy transfer, the almost meditative consumption. A large whale could sustain a Megalodon for days, perhaps even weeks, allowing the giant shark to rest, digest, and patrol its vast domain. Its very presence would shape the behavior of other creatures, forcing marine mammals to become more wary, more evasive. Younger, smaller, or less vigilant individuals would be most at risk, serving as an unseen, powerful selector in the grand evolutionary game, sculpting the very future of marine mammal diversity. Its shadow was an ever-present influence on the Miocene and Pliocene seas. It was the living embodiment of apex. But even the most perfect of creatures, perfectly adapted to their environment, find themselves caught in the inescapable currents of time and change. The reign of the Megalodon, spanning millions of years, was utterly dependent upon a specific set of environmental conditions. The warmth, the abundance, the broad coastal nurseries. As geological epochs shifted and the Earth entered new phases, these subtle yet profound environmental transformations began to reshape the oceans, slowly, inexorably, pulling the very rug out from beneath the feet of this magnificent titan. The first whispers of change came in the form of a slow, almost imperceptible global cooling trend, an unhurried drift towards colder climes. It began gently in the late Miocene, around 10 to 5 million years ago, gathering momentum into the Pliocene, approximately 5 to 2.6 million years ago. Imagine not a sudden dramatic drop in temperature, but a persistent, gradual chill. Across centuries, the warmth that once cradled the vast oceans began to subtly recede, like the gradual fading of a long golden summer day. This global cooling wasn't just a matter of cooler water. It triggered a cascade of environmental alterations. As temperatures plummeted in the polar regions, ice caps began to expand, thickening slowly at the poles. Think of immense crystalline edifices growing silently, inch by imperceptible inch, over millions of years. This slow but monumental accumulation of ice had a direct consequence. It drew vast quantities of water from the oceans, leading to a steady, majestic drop in global sea levels. Consider the gradual retreat of the coastlines, those sprawling, productive mangrove forests and extensive seagrass meadows, the rich, sun-drenched nurseries where so much life flourished and began its journey, would have slowly begun to shrink, to transform, or even disappear. Shallow shelves that were once prime habitat for marine mammals and their young would have been exposed, becoming dry land. This erosion of vital nursery and feeding grounds would have had a devastating impact on the lower echelons of the food web, directly affecting the abundance of the megalodon's prey. It's not just a change in latitude or depth, but a fundamental alteration in the architecture of the world it knew. The familiar boundaries of its hunting territories began to shift, making vast areas less hospitable. And with these grand planetary movements, the mighty ocean currents, the very veins of global nutrient distribution, also began to reorganize themselves. The formation and expansion of ice sheets altered the flow of cold, deep water. New gyres would have formed, while older, once prolific upwelling zones, where nutrient-rich deep waters surged to the surface, sparking immense plankton blooms, might have diminished or relocated entirely. This redistribution of oceanic productivity meant that areas that were once reliably abundant with prey might slowly, imperceptibly, become barren, while other regions, perhaps too cold for the megalodon's liking, began to thrive. The world was changing its song, slowly tuning to a colder, more fragmented melody. And for a creature so deeply intertwined with the boundless abundance and warmth of its prior environment, these shifts were more than just an inconvenience. They represented a fundamental challenge to its very mode of being. The generous table that had fed the megalodon so well for millions of years was now slowly, gently beginning to clear. As its world subtly shifted, so too did the behaviours of its most crucial prey, the great whales, sensing the imperceptible cooling and the changing distribution of their own food sources. The vast schools of krill and fish began an evolutionary migration. Imagine a long, majestic pilgrimage towards colder, richer polar waters. These regions, once less hospitable, were now becoming prime feeding grounds, bursting with the superabundance of cold water krill and fish blooms, perfectly suited to nourish the immense bodies of baleen whales. But this northward, or southward, trek presented a profound dilemma for the megalodon. Its warm water preference, rooted in its evolutionary history and perhaps aided by its regional endothermy, would have kept it predominantly in temperate and tropical latitudes. To follow its primary food source into these increasingly chilly waters would have been metabolically demanding, requiring a much greater internal effort to maintain the critical temperature of its enormous body and active muscles. For a creature of such vast size, maintaining even regional warmth against truly cold water currents would be akin to constantly stoking an enormous internal furnace with ever-dwindling supplies of fuel. The energy expenditure simply might not have been worth the calorific return. Simultaneously, the marine mammals themselves began to specialize, adapting with remarkable efficiency to these newly thriving cold water ecosystems. Ancestors of modern baleen whales developed even thicker blubber layers, crucial for insulation in icy seas. Their circulatory systems evolved intricate networks known as counter-current heat exchangers, allowing them to conserve precious body heat by transferring warmth from arterial blood to colder venous blood returning from the extremities. Seals, sea lions, and specialized dugongs further honed their cold water adaptations, growing thicker fur or blubber, modifying their diving physiology to exploit deep, cold resources. For the Megalodon, a creature exquisitely designed for the generous warmth and predictable abundance of Miocene and early Pliocene oceans, this diversification of its prey presented a deepening challenge. It wasn't that the whales vanished entirely from its comfortable habitats. Rather, a substantial and increasing portion of the overall whale population began to spend more of its life cycle, especially crucial feeding and breeding phases, in waters too cold or energetically costly for the Megalodon to comfortably patrol. The rich buffet was slowly, steadily, moving to an unreachable chamber. The food was still there, yes, but for this specific diner, it was moving further and further out of reach, forcing a continuous and draining chase. And just as the environment was slowly changing its temperament, so too was the very fabric of the predatory landscape itself evolving. Into the arena stepped new challengers, not necessarily direct competitors for the Megalodon's vast size, but increasingly specialized, intelligent, and agile hunters, particularly some of the macroraptorial sperm whales and ancestors of modern killer whales. These new forms were perfectly suited to the evolving oceans, perhaps better adapted to varied prey, more capable of tolerating fluctuating temperatures, or possessing distinct social hunting strategies that granted them an edge. Consider the appearance of leviathans like Leviathan melvillei, a macroraptorial sperm whale from the late Miocene, contemporary with Megalodon for a time. Unlike its modern, squid-eating sperm whale cousin, Leviathan possessed an enormous set of functional teeth in both its upper and lower jaws, designed not for suction feeding or deep-sea squid hunting, but for tearing apart large marine mammals. Imagine its colossal muscular head, not designed for filtering plankton, but for seizing and subduing large prey. These were intelligent, powerful marine mammal predators, likely with advanced echolocation and perhaps social hunting patterns that offered a sophisticated alternative to the Megalodon's brute force approach. It wasn't a matter of constant direct battle. It was a division of resources, a sharing of the now shrinking table. Two kings attempting to feast from the same, slowly diminishing banquet. Furthermore, ancestors of modern killer whales, orcas, were also beginning their ascent. Though perhaps smaller individually than Megalodon, they compensated with remarkable intelligence, complex social structures, and highly cooperative hunting techniques. An individual Megalodon, no matter how immense, hunted largely alone. Imagine a vast, powerful individual hunting in a solitary splendor. Now envision a coordinated pod of highly intelligent marine mammals, communicating through an intricate symphony of clicks and whistles, working together to corner, harass, and eventually subdue much larger prey, perhaps even young whales. Their hunting grounds would increasingly overlap with the Megalodon's, and while a single orca ancestor might not directly challenge a full-grown Megalodon, the relentless efficiency of a group of highly coordinated, fast, and intelligent predators would have reduced the availability of shared prey, particularly the vulnerable juveniles and sick animals that might otherwise have been easier pickings for the giant shark. This isn't to paint a picture of epic, bloody territorial wars between titans. Rather, it's a subtler shift, an ecological partitioning of a tightening resource base. The ocean, while still vast, became less unilaterally abundant in the very specific, large, blubber-rich prey that Megalodon relied upon. These emerging competitors were simply more adaptable, better equipped to thrive in the changing oceanic landscape, capable of targeting a wider range of prey or exploiting niches that the massive, highly specialized Megalodon simply couldn't fill. The balance of power was slowly, imperceptibly, tilting away from the singular, brute force elegance of the Megalodon towards the multifaceted, adaptability of others. Its unparalleled strength was beginning to find itself matched by diverse intelligence and coordinated action, reducing the caloric opportunities its world once freely offered. And so we arrive at the culmination, the insidious accumulation of pressures that, when woven together, ultimately created an environment too challenging for the Megalodon to endure. There was no single cataclysmic event, no sudden impact, no solitary killer. Instead, its decline and eventual disappearance was the slow, unhurried consequence of a web of interconnected environmental changes, each thread pulling gently, yet persistently, until the entire structure, once so robust, became unsustainable. Imagine a finely tuned machine, meticulously crafted for a specific demanding purpose. Its engine runs best on a particular grade of fuel within a narrow range of temperatures. For millions of years, this machine operated flawlessly because the fuel was plentiful and the temperatures were ideal. But then, almost imperceptibly, the quality of the fuel slowly degrades, becoming scarcer, harder to find. And the ambient temperature outside the engine begins to drift, moving steadily away from its optimal range. This is the quiet struggle of the Megalodon. First, the ever-increasing challenge of food scarcity. The whales, its primary calorie source, were on the move, chasing cooler, nutrient-rich polar waters. Those that remained in temperate zones might have become more agile, their senses honed by generations of predation. Meanwhile, its new competitors, the burgeoning diversity of macroraptorial sperm whales and ancient orca-like predators, were also taking their share of the now scarcer, blubber-rich prey. This wasn't necessarily a fight. It was a slow siphoning away of resources, a silent competition over diminishing spoils. For an animal requiring tens of thousands of calories a day, a subtle, prolonged reduction in the ease of hunting or in the availability of appropriately sized and caloric prey becomes an existential threat. Its very immense size, once its ultimate advantage, now demanded a ceaseless and massive caloric intake, an intake that its changing world was increasingly struggling to provide. Next, consider the relentless demand of temperature regulation. Its regional endothermy was an evolutionary marvel, providing a localized internal warmth that boosted performance. But maintaining that internal heat in progressively colder ambient waters is an energetically expensive endeavor. Imagine needing to continually shovel more coal into your internal furnace, just to stay at optimal operating temperature, while your coal supplies are dwindling and becoming harder to acquire. Every movement in colder water would demand more from its body, forcing it to burn more calories just to exist comfortably, thus increasing its need for food in an environment where food was already less available. This creates a spiraling drain, a biological debt that could only lead to decline. The loss of nursery grounds presented another quiet catastrophe. Megalodon, like many large sharks, likely relied on shallow, sheltered coastal areas as vital nurseries for its young. These protected, nutrient-rich environments offered safety from larger predators and abundant smaller prey for the vulnerable pups to grow. But as sea levels dropped due to ice sheet expansion, these coastal areas, the sprawling mangroves, the expansive seagrass beds began to shrink, erode, or simply disappear. Imagine fewer safe havens for Megalodon mothers to bear their young, and fewer calories available for the growing juveniles. If new generations are unable to thrive and reach maturity, if mortality rates for the young increase due to lack of protection or sufficient food, then the overall population suffers an unseen long-term blow, slowly contracting and aging without sufficient replenishment. The future simply wasn't being born in sufficient numbers, and all of this culminates in a devastating imbalance of the energy budget. Life is a grand balancing act of energy, calories taken in versus calories expended. For the Megalodon, its magnificent specialized adaptations for capturing massive, slow-moving, warm water prey in an abundant environment meant that its energy budget was beautifully balanced. But when its ideal prey migrated, when new competitors emerged, when the waters chilled, and when its crucial nurseries diminished, the balance tipped. The equation turned profoundly unfavorable. Its incredible size, once its signature of dominance, now made it uniquely vulnerable. It couldn't easily shift to a diet of smaller, faster-moving prey because its colossal body and formidable jaws were specialized for massive quarry, not nimble, elusive fish or squid. It was an ultimate specialist, exquisitely adapted to a world that was no longer quite so hospitable. We arrive at the understanding of too dangerous to survive, not in a simplistic, sensational way, but with a profound, quiet contemplation of specialization. The Megalodon was dangerous in its absolute perfection, its uncompromising adaptation as a super apex predator of a specific, bountiful marine environment. It was so finely tuned to that abundant, warm world that when the very conditions of that world slowly, subtly, inevitably began to shift, its very specialization became its tragic flaw. It couldn't unevolve, it couldn't adapt quickly enough to shed its immensity, its warm water preferences, or its singular hunting strategy for whales. Its danger, its potent efficacy, became a self-limiting prophecy in a changing world. It was dangerously optimized for a golden age that eventually had to end. So, how did this grand story end? Not with a sudden, violent upheaval that cleared the seas of its formidable presence in a dramatic flash. Instead, its disappearance was a gradual, quiet fading, spanning perhaps hundreds of thousands of years. We imagine generations becoming successively harder, each birth less certain, each hunt more demanding. Perhaps the mature adults found enough food for their immense needs, but the cumulative effects of less accessible prey, colder waters, increased competition, and shrinking nursery grounds began to quietly starve out the younger generations, slowly eroding the population from its future. Picture then a single, aging megalodon, perhaps one of the last of its kind. Its vast body, still immense and powerful, gliding through increasingly cool, quieter waters, where whales are fewer or faster, or perhaps simply gone, having migrated beyond reach. Its searches, its senses still sharp, but finding only shadows where once there was substance. Perhaps its internal fires, those magnificent hearths of muscle, strain to maintain their warmth against an unrelenting chill. It still hunts, of course, for its entire being is designed for the hunt, but with an ever-diminishing return for its colossal effort. Perhaps the last of them did not die in a desperate struggle, but simply failed to reproduce successfully, starved over time, or found itself utterly outmaneuvered and outcompeted in the dwindling resource-scarce zones it still called home. The vastness of the ocean, which had cradled its magnificent reign for so long, slowly absorbed its last breath, its incredible power becoming a gentle whisper in the currents of time. The final moments of its long lineage are lost to us, sealed forever in the deep sediments, leaving behind only the polished, formidable beauty of its fossilized teeth, each one a silent echo of a forgotten age. It simply ceased to be. Its time passed, its perfect, dangerous adaptation rendered unsustainable by the unyielding march of geological change. The ocean kept its secrets, as it always does, and so when we gently draw back from the incredible world of Carcharocles Megalodon, stepping away from the immediate facts of its immense power and ancient reign, a deeper current begins to emerge. We see not just the story of a formidable predator, but a profound testament to the ever-shifting, endlessly interconnected tapestry of life itself. The grand tale of the Megalodon is less about its solitary dominance, and more about its intricate relationship with a world in constant flux, a whisper of change echoing across epochs. It is easy to become awestruck by the sheer scale, the incredible bite force, and the apex status that this magnificent creature commanded. For millions of years, it patrolled the warm, nutrient-rich waters of the Miocene and Pliocene, a living leviathan, a silent, powerful force in the ocean's vibrant heart. It existed in a dynamic equilibrium with its environment, shaping it as much as it was shaped by it. Its colossal size, once its ultimate advantage, allowed it to target the largest marine mammals, navigating an ecological niche few others could truly enter. This specialization, this incredible adaptation to a specific set of circumstances and prey, seems at first glance like the very definition of evolutionary success. It spoke of mastery, of having found the optimal way to thrive. But as the geological ages slowly turned, like the silent hands of an immense invisible clock, the very elements that fostered its triumph began to subtly shift beneath its fins. The story of the Megalodon's eventual retreat from the world's oceans is a quiet lesson in the delicate balance of existence, even for the mightiest. It gently reminds us that no being, no matter how perfectly adapted, is an island unto itself, entirely insulated from the subtle currents that move through the great ocean of time. The seemingly absolute power it wielded was, in truth, interwoven with countless threads: the temperature of the water, the availability and behavior of its preferred food, the patterns of currents, and the very shape of coastlines. We find ourselves contemplating, then, how strength can, in an unforeseen turn, become a profound vulnerability. The Megalodon's entire being was finely tuned for a world of warm, shallow coastal waters, rich with abundant, slow-moving large prey. Its immense energy requirements demanded a consistent bounty, an oceanic larder overflowing with easily accessible sustenance. Its vast size, a crown of evolutionary achievement, also tethered it to environments capable of supporting such an expenditure. When the vast unseen forces of planetary change began to reconfigure those environments, that finely tuned specialization, once its glory, became a profound anchor. Imagine the subtle cooling that spread through the oceans. Not a sudden snap of winter, but a slow, gradual deepening chill, an almost imperceptible lowering of the temperature gauge over vast stretches of time. These slight shifts in temperature would have initiated a ripple effect, first influencing the smaller organisms, then their predators, and so on, upwards through the entire food web. Marine ecosystems are incredibly sensitive to temperature. Cooler waters might have impacted the distribution of vital spawning grounds, altered the nutrient upwellings that fuel productivity, and fundamentally reshaped the very habitats that Megalodon had called home for millions of years. And with this, its comfort zone, its hunting grounds, would have slowly, incrementally begun to recede. The impact of this cooling on its nursery grounds offers another poignant reflection. These sheltered, warmer coastal areas were essential for the survival of young Megalodon, providing safety from larger predators and an abundance of smaller prey for their early growth. As these nurseries cooled or shifted, becoming less suitable, the survival rate of its young may have slowly dwindled, thinning the new generations entering the vast ocean. A silent attrition, unfolding across thousands of years, almost imperceptible in human terms, yet inexorable in its evolutionary consequence. The future, in essence, was slowly being eroded, one fragile new life at a time. And what of the mighty prey upon which it depended? Here, too, the tapestry unravelled with elegant complexity. The whales, upon which Megalodon relied so heavily, were not static entities. They too were on their own evolutionary journeys, responding to the same planetary forces. As oceans cooled, some whale species began to adapt, migrating towards colder, richer polar waters or developing faster, more elusive swimming styles. They developed new protective strategies, perhaps forming tighter pods, or simply outmaneuvering a predator adapted to a different oceanic pace. Imagine the vast, slow shift. the disappearance of familiar shapes from warming equatorial hunting grounds, replaced by more nimble or simply absent forms. This movement of prey presented Megalodon with a stark, silent choice. Either adapt to hunting in unfamiliar, colder waters where its physiology might struggle, or face a diminishing larder in the waters it knew best. It could not simply chase them into the deep, cold chasms of the polar regions. Its physiology, tied to warmth, and its massive body demanding colossal caloric intake, limited its reach. Its success was intimately woven into the very fabric of those temperate, highly productive zones. When that fabric began to fray, the predator that epitomized strength found itself delicately balanced on the edge of sustenance. In this way, the grand scale of the Megalodon highlights a powerful ecological principle: the profound interdependence of all life. It shows us that even the pinnacle predator is merely one piece within a vast living puzzle, and when even a seemingly minor piece shifts, the reverberations are felt throughout the whole. The deep sea currents, the sunlight reaching the surface, the smallest plankton, the massive whales, all interconnected in a swirling, ceaseless dance. A change in one aspect is never truly isolated. It sends gentle, undeniable ripples throughout the entire system. And then, softly, we must consider the emerging presence of new players, the competitors for resources that may have previously been plentiful. While none challenged its colossal size, the evolving marine ecosystem brought forth new predators like ancient orcas and emerging great white sharks, more adaptable, perhaps more efficient in certain niches. These creatures, though smaller, might have slowly, gently nudged away portions of the food chain that Megalodon had enjoyed, especially among smaller or younger prey. The vastness of the ocean, once seemingly limitless, was now being redivided, its riches sought by an increasingly diverse and nimble cast of hunters. This wasn't a fierce battle for supremacy. It was a more subtle, long-term reallocation of ecological resources, influenced by changing conditions. In a world where its primary giant prey was becoming scarcer, these smaller pressures would have contributed to the cumulative stress. Looking across all of this, the Megalodon's departure from the Earth's stage becomes a quiet reflection on the nature of change itself. It wasn't a dramatic cataclysm, a meteor strike, or a sudden devastating event. Instead, it seems to have been a culmination of numerous compounding environmental shifts: a gradual cooling, the migration and evolution of its prey, the reconfiguration of vital breeding grounds, and the gentle rise of other successful predators. Each element, on its own, might have been manageable, but taken together over immense stretches of time, they converged into an insurmountable challenge for a creature so profoundly specialized. This slow, drawn-out unfolding invites a contemplative understanding of how even the mightiest evolutionary trajectories can curve, fade, and ultimately gracefully conclude. There is no judgment here, no moral lesson about failure, but simply the observation of nature's relentless, unceasing innovation. Life experiments, thrives, adapts, and in doing so, inevitably transforms, making way for new forms and new balances. The Megalodon, for all its power, existed within this larger, beautiful flow. It reached an unparalleled peak of dominance, only to recede when the world it was perfectly designed for began to subtly change around it. In the quiet spaces between these moments, we can feel a profound sense of humility. The Megalodon's journey reminds us that life is tenacious and adaptable, but it also has limits, particularly when faced with forces beyond its capacity to respond quickly enough. It compels us to consider our own place within this delicate, magnificent system and the interconnectedness of all living things, from the smallest microbial communities to the largest marine mammals, and to us. The enduring echo of the Megalodon's reign, then, is not one of terrifying power, but of graceful surrender to the profound, continuous evolution of the planet. Its legacy isn't simply the fossilized teeth we unearth, but the broader understanding they help to forge. That true strength in nature lies not just in might, but in a delicate, fluid responsiveness to an ever-changing world. It suggests that adaptation is not just about growing larger or fiercer, but about an exquisite dance with the shifting environment, a readiness to adjust and reinvent when the music of the planet changes its tune. It offers a gentle wisdom about the vast timescales over which life and planetary systems operate, reminding us that every creature, no matter its dominance, ultimately exists within a magnificent, ephemeral moment in time, bound to the currents of Earth's unfolding story. And so, as the deep ancient currents that carried us through the vast stretches of time now gently ebb, we find ourselves drifting towards the tranquil shores of contemplation. We've journeyed together into the profound depths where Otistus Megalodon once reigned, a true monarch of the Miocene and Pliocene seas. We began, perhaps, with an image of raw, untamed power, a shadow of immense scale and formidable teeth, conjuring that primal awe of the apex predator, the very embodiment of what seemed, to our minds, an unstoppable force. The whispers of its legend still carry on the wind, a testament to a creature that commanded an unparalleled dominion. But as our expedition into the echoes of the past softly concludes, a different kind of quiet settles over the water. It's the hushed reverence that follows the departure of something truly grand, leaving behind not merely an absence, but a rebalanced equilibrium, a repattering of life's eternal, intricate tapestry. In the gentle afterglow of our journey, we can reflect on the profound poetic truth woven into the Megalodon's story. The notion that a creature, in its very essence, could be considered too dangerous to survive. This is not a judgment whispered by the patient waves, or engraved by the ceaseless tides. Rather, it is a nuanced observation of nature's delicate, self-regulating elegance, its immense energy requirements, its sheer scale, its relentless efficiency in a very specific, abundant niche. These characteristics, once its greatest strengths, eventually became its ecological Achilles' heel when that very niche began to subtly shift and gradually crumble. Nature, in its boundless wisdom, often favours the adaptable, the subtly resilient, the strategically diverse, over the overwhelming dominance of brute force or singular specialisation. It's a timeless, gentle lesson, murmured across the eons. True permanence is rarely etched in tooth and claw, but rather found in the fluid dance of ceaseless adjustment and patient transformation. The planet Earth, our ancient home, breathes in deep, majestic rhythms, and her climates shift like unseen ocean currents, finding a new path gentle, yet inexorable, in their passage through deep time. The very warmth and oceanic abundance, the rich coastal nursery grounds teeming with great whales and colossal seals, upon which the Megalodon's grand existence was so utterly dependent, began in geologic time to softly recede. It was a subtle withdrawal, a gradual tightening of a once opulent feast, whispering of colder waters, of shifting migratory routes, and the slow, inevitable redistribution of the bounties of the deep. For a creature so uniquely specialized, so monumentally proportioned, and so absolutely reliant on specific environmental conditions, these transformations proved to be a hurdle too high to clear, a current too strong to swim against. It was not a question of strength or will, but one of profound ecological compatibility with a world that was steadily, patiently, reinventing itself around it. And in this quiet contemplation, we can trace the exquisite, enduring beauty of species that learned not to dominate, but to change, not to conquer, but to diversify, to whisper through the shadows rather than roar across the open ocean. We think of the ancient cetaceans, ancestors of today's majestic whales, who were once vital prey. They adapted with remarkable grace, not only surviving the epoch of the Megalodon but thriving and evolving into diverse forms, some embracing the filter-feeding strategy of the baleen whales, others refining their hunting techniques and migrating across vast oceanic canvases. These are stories not of individual might, but of communal resilience, of intelligent, sometimes subtle, adaptation to new challenges, to colder waters, to scarcer resources, to more complex and dynamic food chains. The gentle giants of today's seas, paradoxically, owe a debt of quiet gratitude to the colossal predator that challenged their ancient lineage, for the pressures it exerted helped hone the very survival skills, the very adaptability that ensured their magnificent continuation into our present world. Their quiet strength is a testament to the fact that success in nature is not merely about overcoming, but about artfully evolving with and through change. As we gently close this chapter of profound discovery, our understanding expands beyond the initial awe inspired by a monstrous predator, reaching towards a more encompassing sense of wonder and the intricate, patient forces that shape all life. There is a deep, humbling truth that even the most formidable creatures, the most seemingly invincible titans, eventually cede their dominance to the quiet, ceaseless march of environmental change, climatic shifts, and the patient ebb and flow of planetary resources. It is a testament to the elegant indifference of nature, an indifference that does not judge, does not punish, but simply rearranges, continually seeking a new, dynamic equilibrium. It's a lullaby sung by the currents themselves, reminding us that every life, every species, every era has its glorious rise and its eventual gentle setting. There is profound peace in recognizing this cycle, this ancient dance between creation and transformation, birth and gentle return. The ocean itself, that vast, enigmatic cradle of life, continues its eternal, patient work. It is more than just water. It is a living archive of all that has been and all that might yet be. The fathomless depths that once cradled the immense form of the Megalodon now hold myriad mysteries yet unsolved, countless life forms yet undiscovered, quietly evolving in currents unseen, under pressures unimaginable to us. The disappearance of a behemoth like the Megalodon serves not as an ending, but as a silent testament to the ocean's eternal capacity for renewal, for ceaseless transformation, for simply being and becoming. It whispers to us of ancient histories unfolding with geological slowness, leaving a trail of fossilized echoes for us to gently unearth and ponder. Each relic, each shard of tooth or bone, is a precious page from the planet's immense storybook, allowing us to connect with the very deep time from which we ourselves arose. Perhaps in our own contemporary existence, observing these ancient histories offers us a gentle mirror, reflecting truths far older than humanity itself. It's a tender reminder that we too are an integral part of this grand flowing narrative, this cosmic dance of existence, adaptation, and eventual transformation. Our impact, like that of every creature throughout time, sends ripples through the intricate, interconnected web of life. The story of the Megalodon, delivered from the silent depths, becomes a subtle whisper from the deep past, an echo of caution yet also one of profound contemplation. It gently nudges us to listen more intently to our planet's ancient rhythms, to strive for a deeper understanding of its delicate, often unseen balances, and to honour the transient yet enduring beauty of all life forms, knowing that nothing, not even a true titan of the primordial seas, is exempt from the patient, persistent tides of change. Let these thoughts drift softly around you, like light filtering through deep ocean water, settling gently into your mind. There's a certain peace, a profound stillness, that comes with acknowledging the vastness of time, the immense processes that unfold far beyond our immediate sight and comprehension. It is a comfort to know that life persists, reshapes, and continues its miraculous journey, even through profound loss, grand transitions, and periods of monumental change. The world doesn't end. It merely reweaves its tapestry, silently and elegantly adjusting, ever new, ever ancient. The deep blue, holding so many secrets, continues its slow, majestic breath, a cradle of evolving wonders. And so, as you settle into wherever you are, whether it's the quiet hush of approaching night or the calm serenity of a peaceful afternoon, know that the universe continues its patient, masterful work. It is ceaselessly sculpting beauty from chaos, nurturing resilience from challenge, and composing its magnificent symphony, one gentle, timeless moment at a time. The story of Megalodon is, ultimately, not just a tale of incredible power, nor merely one of disappearance. It is, instead, a quiet meditation on balance, on the profound wisdom embedded within evolution's unfolding, and on the enduring transformative power of the living world. It gently asks us to consider not just what once existed, but why it departed, and what profound lessons its magnificent absence imparts to us, observers on this incredible journey. May this deep, abiding understanding settle around you, bringing a sense of profound serenity as you drift into the quiet moments that follow. Remember the enduring dance of life and death, of magnificent creation and delicate adaptation, always overseen by the gentle, tireless spirit of our beautiful ancient planet. The vast oceans, now teeming with different wonders and quiet power, carry the silent echoes of all who came before, weaving them into the vibrant, ceaseless song of the present. They offer us an infinite wellspring of awe, and a timeless invitation to peaceful contemplation. Rest well, knowing that the tapestry of life is ever unfolding in the most serene and majestic of ways. If these peaceful journeys through time and wonder bring a quiet comfort, consider subscribing and joining us again in this cozy corner of cosmic storytelling. Until we meet once more beneath the quiet starlight or in the profound depths of an ancient ocean, may your own journey be filled with gentle peace and endless discovery.